The next shoe we'd like to demonstrate for you is the driving shoe. This is a type of shoe that Alan and I have developed to shoe the horses that work on the streets of Glasgow. We have used this, we call it a jumped up outside. We bump the outside of the shoe to give more lateral support. That's where we find the horse needs it, and without taking a wide section of steel and drawing it down, if we take a narrower section, this is 1.25 inches by half, which we feel is heavy enough for the horses that we're shoeing, and we bump up the outside heel. You'll see me here making the front shoe. I'm just jumping up the outside heel and forging the heel and doing a hammer finished heel with so that there's no need to rasp. There's no need to make these heels really sharp and pointy. You'll see the outside where I'm forging the heel is nice and round, so that when the horse is lying down, it's not going to cut into its elbow with its shoe. Some people take the shoe really sharp away from the frog to a point, and it looks good in a shoemaking contest, but for form and function, it's absolutely not a good practice. So you can see here the outside heel slightly swelled, put probably 1/2 inch of steel packed back into it, nice and round off the hammer. Now before I mark this shoe, I like to forge the inside of the shoe. Instead of marking it 1 inch long on one side and maybe not drawing it quite 1 inch, I actually like to, it doesn't take any more heat, I actually like to narrow the inside branch slightly and forge the inside heel before I actually start and mark and make the shoe. There's nothing wrong with marking the shoe just 1 inch off to the outside, but I find I can be much more precise if I make both heels before I start making the shoe, and it also gives me more time to put the nail holes in the branches with the heat being retained in the shoe. So again, you can see hammer finish in the heel, and slightly drawing down the inside branch, because this shoe is for a working horse. It's going to be fitted quite close up the inside with just minimal heel expansion, so you don't want too much width, and again a nice safe round heel for when the horse is lying down. Now I just mark the shoe just no more than 1/8 longer on the outside, and that way you don't get a huge long outside and a short inside. So you go 1/8 of an inch long on the outside branch, that gives you 1/4 inch long overall, and double check your measurement. There's nothing wrong with doing that, and that way you're not going to make the shoe and end up with your nail holes all racked because you've made a mistake in the measuring. And now we're going to do the toe bend. Now this is not a square toe shoe, but it's a bold toe shoe. So if you watch where I hit the outside toe quarter, and I leave the toe alone, and then I do toe quarter, and you can see that the bend is coming into the shoe without me actually hitting the toe of the shoe at all. So I've got a nice bold toe shoe with a lovely sweeping bend without actually putting the hammer around the toe of the shoe. Now I start the toe quarters and get them nicely balanced in the shoe, and you can see here a lovely bold toe shoe. Now, having formed the heel already, all this heat is for just forming the branches and punching the nail holes. Pull it at the toe, start it on the horn, and go over the bick, just exactly the same as we did with the agricultural horseshoes. And you get a nice gentle sweep from the toe quarters, which are quite high up in the toe, finishing up at the heel. Stamp the nail holes very coarse, because we're going to give this lateral support, and watch how the stamp is being hit. I'm hitting the inside of the stamp. I'm not actually hitting the stamp flat. I'm hitting the inside crown of the stamp flat, and that doesn't bulge the frog eyes into the inner border of the shoe. And then if you just run round the nail holes before you punch them, then you can end up with very little displacement in the inside of the nail holes. And you can see I've got loads of time before punching the holes, because there's still plenty of heat in the shoe because I've made the heel first. Again, think angle, think foot when you're punching the nail holes. These are made for Clydesdale horses, which have got different angles to them than Belgians or Percherons. So You have to think the horse and the breed of horse you're making the shoe for, and the angle of the foot that it has. The coarseness of those nails will drive that shoe on easily, very easily. And again, when you're measuring the foot, it's the wall, it's where the wall is that dictates the size of the shoe. When forging the inside branch, again the heel's already done. Pull out the toe, start round the horn, move to the bick, and use your left hand, drop in your left hand, run the hammer right into the heel. We've shown you this now about, that will be 12 times, so you can see that this is a practice we use in everyday work, and we find it very successful. It was first shown to me by David Wilson, who I consider one of my mentors, and is one of the world recognised Clydesdale shoemakers. The nails going in the inside branch, you'll notice the difference between coarse and fine. These nail holes are straight up the middle of the branch. So again, this shoe has been fitted quite close on the inside to prevent it being stood off by the other foot. Look at the angle that the pritchel's going in at, straight up and down almost, with a slight angulation as we get towards the toenail. The tartle, the piece of steel that was getting brushed off that nail hole, is a sure indication that your pritchel needs sharpened. When you see this, just take time and take the pritchel and reset it, and you'll find that it'll save you a lot of time in the long run when you're making shoes and you're making pairs or sets of shoes. Keep your tools sharp. Always have two pritchels in case one breaks or gets blunted, and tool preparation is fundamental as you're going along. I'm using the rowed side of the hammer now to make sure I have absolutely no sole pressure. If you've got a bare-footed horse, this is absolutely vital. Usually with these draft horses we've got absolutely loads of foot to put the shoes onto, but sometimes if you've got a bare or broken foot, sole pressure can make a horse lame. So really make sure that when you're fitting the shoe and when you're making the shoe that you don't have any pressure that could be applied to the sole of the horse's foot. Again, check your nail holes. Last thing you should do, it makes for less time under the horse, less time at the horse, if you can just take the nail and hammer it straight in the hole. We have a nice, balanced, symmetrical horseshoe ready for clipping. Just bump the toe just ever so slightly, that gives it a even more bold appearance. Flatten it slightly. You'll notice that Alan and I haven't bumped the toe of any of the shoes we've made. We don't find it necessary. Again, I'm using the same hammer as we use for turning the shoe to draw the clip. I'm using a shearing motion. Look how I'm holding the shoe against the anvil with the tongs. Using the heel of my hammer, again drawing the clip from the base to the tip. You'll see us using different forging techniques as you're going along without me having to explain. You'll see us, there'll be things that we do that you see that you think, oh, now I see that, and that's the whole purpose of this video. Without us explaining, we're actually showing and telling you the things that we do in everyday shoemaking and shoeing. If you look at the type of hammer, you'll see the face of the hammer is actually broader than the steel. This stops us leaving hammer marks in the shoe. We're now going to punch studs in this, punch stud holes in these shoes for the reception of 3/8 studs. The studs have got a tungsten core in them that give the horse grip on the cobbled streets of some of the inner city lanes of Glasgow. This is how we use a tapered stud that's set at 5/16 in diameter, and we punch a stud hole like so. You'll see in the next section Alan punching 2 stud holes in 1 heat. That is the way we would normally do it. Saves time and it is quite efficient. Now for the reception of the stud, we punch the hole. We make sure that the taper is exactly the same taper as the stud. The stud locks almost in, and then we use just a piece of steel on top of the tungsten. Don't use a hammer or you'll wreck your hammer. One blow drives the stud into the shoe. And here we have the completed shoe with both studs. Alan is now forging the hind shoe for a driving horse. He's jumping up the outside, the same principles as I did with the front shoe. He's forging the outside heel and putting loads of steel in the outside heel of the hind shoe. Again, for the same principle, there's no point in you putting a heavier section on and drawing it down. It's far better to pack some more into the heel. So having jumped up the heel, he's going to forge the heel portion of the shoe. Now, the horse, a driving horse needs lateral support on the outside of its hind feet. That's where it pushes off from, that's where it pulls from, that's where all the energy comes from. So it needs maximum traction and maximum support on the outside of the hind foot. So now he's forging the heel, first of all away from the frog like that, and then taking the outside edge off like that, and then flattening it. And he's packing it back. He's not drawing it down at all. He's actually packing it back into itself, packing the molecules of steel back into themselves before he flattens them. And that's the completed outside heel. Now, having done that, he's going to jump up the branch of the shoe just to give even more lateral support. So first of all, he cools the heel portion of the shoe so that he doesn't wreck the forging that he's already done. And he's now forging the branch. He's thickening the branch, widening the branch, and putting more steel, more wear steel in the outside branch of the hind shoe. It's called a full jumped up outside hind shoe. And when you're forging this, you have to allow for how much steel you're going to put in the shoe. This was length and width plus 3 inches for just a normal plain stamp shoe, so he's actually going to lose a full inch of steel in the outside branch of the shoe when he's finished the completed shoe. Now he does it slightly different from me in as much as he's going to mark the shoe before he draws the inside branch, and he's going to mark the shoe an inch longer on the lateral branch. So he's going to mark it half an inch off centre. And he'll forge the inside heel as he's making the shoe, as opposed to doing it on the straight. He obviously trusts his forging ability much more than I do mine. This is Alan setting his calipers 2 7/8 for the width between the nail holes and just on 2 inches from the toe to the toenail holes. Slight bump in the toe, but not excessive. Doesn't take a full heat to bump the toe up. And is now doing the toe bend of the hind shoe. As we explained earlier, the toe bend of the hind shoe is slightly more pointed than the front shoe, but again, symmetry should prevail at all times. You have to try and not get straight portions in the toe bend, because the toe is going to correspond to the toe of the horse's foot, and if you have a straight bit in it, then you have to sacrifice the foot to get the shoe to fit properly. And this is where proper shoemaking is fundamental. Again, the same principle as before, with hanging the inside nail back from the mark and putting the outside nail right on the mark. This allows them to be coarse on the outside and fine on the inside. But the toenails balance right across the toe. So having marked the shoe offset, he's now forging, drawing the inside branch and forging the inside heel. Using the same principles as we've discussed before. Usually it's away from the frog, hammer blow away from the frog, hammer blow towards the frog, and don't flatten too often. If you flatten too often, you end up with a thin heel. So pack it in and then flatten at the very end. But if you watch Alan's forging technique, you'll see that each hammer blow overlaps the other. Never two hammer blows at the toe and one at the heel. Where you start, your hammer blows always follow each other. Now you'll see that having forged his heel, he doesn't have enough heat in the branch to finish the branch, so he has to put the shoe back in the fire. So if he'd forged the heel in the straight, he still wouldn't have lost the heat. So it's taken him exactly the same numbers of heat to make the shoe as it would have done had he made both heels on the straight. It's just different styles suit different people. To do this type of hammer clip, you use a sort of shearing effect, a good sharp edge on the anvil. Use the round edge of your hammer and almost shear the portion out the shoe. You don't need a huge chunk to get a huge, or to get a proportional size clip. Now this hind shoe is going to have 2 stud holes in it, just like the front one, and Alan is going to try, Alan is actually going to punch both stud holes at the same time using the same principles as I used in the front shoe. You can see the balance of the toenails in this shot. It demonstrates the distance that the stamp was back from the calipers. Alan is now punching both holes. At the same time, he's using the punch from the foot surface first, and then he'll turn the shoe over and just hold the shoe, flatten the holes, and then finalize the holes with the taper from the ground surface. The taper should correspond exactly to the taper on the stud, and once you've done this quite a few times, you'll find that you can get it using your eye. You don't need to measure it, and you become quite adept at it. Check the measurement of the shoe, that it fits. Check the heel fit, because once you don't want to be hammering round these stud holes, so get everything set up before you put the studs in.